The recorder was already running when she sat down. Meera Pillai did not look like a woman who had survived anything. She looked like a woman who had simply continued. The way a house continues to stand after everyone inside it has died. 63 years old, hair the color of ash pressed flat. She wore a cotton sari, the color of unripe turmeric, and she kept her hands in her lap the entire time, very still, the way you keep your hands when you're afraid of what they might do if you let them move freely. I had driven for 4 hours from Pune to reach her. The village, Kolwad, a name that does not appear on most maps, sat in a fold between two hills in Sahyadri range where the mobile signal dropped completely around the third kilometer of unpaved road. My editor had given me 2 days and a company recorder and told me not to come back without something printable. I did not know, sitting across from Meera in her concrete floored kitchen while her granddaughter bought us chai neither of us would drink, that I would spend the next 11 months trying to find a way to write about what she told me. Some things resist being written down, not because they are unspeakable exactly, but because the moment you put them in sentences, they become something smaller than they actually were. She started as old people often do, somewhere unexpected. My father's family was from north, she said. Uttar Pradesh. Very religious. Simple. When he married my mother, he came here. They said he would not last one monsoon. The land here is different. The people are different. I asked her how it was different. She considered this seriously. Here, the old things did not leave when the new things arrived. You understand? In cities, when you build a road, whatever was under the road, it goes away. Here, it does not go away. It just goes quiet. Her granddaughter, maybe 14, hovered near the doorway. Meera said something sharp in Marathi without looking at her, and the girl disappeared. She should not hear this part, Meera said, and then she picked up a chai and put it back down without drinking any. It had happened in 1987, October, near the end of the monsoon, when the hills were still green and the air smelled of wet stone and wood smoke, and overripened guavas rotting in the grass. Meera had been 31. Her husband Dilip was alive then. Her 2 sons were small. She had no particular reason to believe that year would be different from any other. The festival was called Navratri, 9 nights. This is not unusual. Navratri happens across the India. Has happened for as long as anyone remembers, and in most places it is music and color, and sweet and women dancing in circles under the string lights. In Kolwad, the celebration is quieter, more inward. There was a small temple at the edge of the village, dedicated to a goddess whose specific name Meera said she would not tell me. And I believed her when she said it was not reluctance but genuine fear that stopped her. And on the third night of Navratri, the women of the village would go to that temple after midnight and stay until dawn. Not for prayer exactly, or rather, prayer was part of it, but not the whole of it. My mother did it, Meera said. Her mother did it. Her mother's mother did it. You go, you sit, and you wait, and sometimes she comes to you. Sometimes she doesn't. Most years, she doesn't. Most years, you sit on a cold floor until your legs go numb, and then you walk home and make breakfast. And in 1987 was not most years, I said. She looked at me for a moment. 1987, she said. Something came, but it was not her. There were 14 women in that temple that night. Mira remembered each of them with a kind of precision that only comes from replaying something 10,000 times. Savitribai, the headman's wife, always wore too much jasmine in her hair. Champa, who was pregnant with her third and should not have come, but whose mother-in-law had insisted. Young Shushma, 17, who had been brought for the first time and who had been giggling about it all week, settled into the temple around 1 in the morning. The priest lit the lamps, small clay diyas, 14 of them, one for each woman, and chanted what needed to be chanted. And then he left, as the priest always left. This was not his time. This was woman's time. The door was not locked, but no one would enter until dawn. Mira said the first hour was normal. Sitting, singing softly, the smell of incense and damp stone, the sound of the hill outside, which is to say almost no sound at all, just that deep rural quiet that feels pressurized if you're not used to it. Then Savitribai stopped singing. She said, not dramatically, she did not fall or cry out. She simply stopped, mid-verse, and tilted her head very slightly to the left, like a dog that has heard a frequency no human can detect. And then she sat perfectly still. I thought she was in a trance, Mira said. This happens sometimes. You go very deep into prayer and the body goes quiet. It is not frightening, it is actually considered auspicious. I asked how long Savitribai sat like that. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. It's hard to remember exactly. Then she turned her head and looked at Champa. A pause. Not looked at, looked into. You know the difference. When someone looks at you, you can look back and you meet somewhere in the middle. This was not that. She was looking at something that was inside Champa, behind her face, like she was reading something written on the back of her eyes. Champa, 7 months pregnant, shifted uncomfortably under the gaze and said something like, Savitri Tai, are you alright? And Savitribai smiled. Mira stopped talking. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a crow called twice and then went silent. Describe the smile, I said, because I had learned by then that with Mira, specificity was the only way forward. She pressed her lips together. You have seen how a child smiles when it finds something it was not supposed to find? Not happy, exactly. Satisfied, proprietary, like it has located a thing that was hidden and now it knows where the hiding place is. That was the smile. And then Mira said this flatly, without emphasis, which made it worse. When Sushma tilted her head, it did not happen all at once. This is the thing Mira kept returning to across that whole afternoon, circling it the way you circle a word you cannot quite say. It was not violent or theatrical. It did not look like anything from any film. It moved slowly. That was the word she used. Slowly, like water finding the lowest point in the floor. First, Savitribai, then Sushma, then two older women on the left side of the temple, then three more. One by one, across those hours, the women in that room tilted their heads to the left, or went very still, with that same particular smile. And then they looked at whoever was not smiling. Mira held out for a long time. She said she did not know why. She was not braver than the others. She was not less afraid. She simply kept thinking. I have to get home to my sons. I have to get home to Dilip. With the focused stupidity of a person refusing to believe what is directly in front of them. By 3 in the morning, there were 3 women left. Mira, Champa, whose bulk perhaps provided some resistance, Or perhaps the thing inside the others was simply saving her. And Rekha, a widow of 50, who had survived a great deal of ordinary suffering and who was now staring around the room with her jaws set and her hands gripped in her lap in a way that Mira recognized as a woman deciding something. Rekha said very quietly, she said, "We need to go. We need to break the door and go." "What did you say?" I asked. Mira was quiet for a moment. "I said we cannot leave." "And Rekha?" "She said they're already gone." The 12 women sitting in the circle did not react to this. They had not spoken in almost an hour. They breathed, they blinked, they held their bodies with looseness that looked almost comfortable, almost restful. They looked like women who had set something down after carrying it for a long time. "That's not the most terrible thing," Mira said. "Not that they seemed frightened." I asked her eventually what had come into the temple, whether she had any name for it, any framework. The priest afterwards said many things. There were rituals, there were 14 days of prayers, used words from old texts, very old, names I did not recognize. He was frightened. You could see it on his face. He was reciting the words from memory with the same look a child has when they speak loudly so they cannot hear what is in the next room. "Did the ritual work?" She looked at me, and for the first time I noticed that she had not blinked in a while. "The woman came back," she said carefully. "Something came back inside them. They walked and ate and spoke. Some of them lived for 20, 30 more years. Champa's baby was born healthy. Sushma married eventually. Savitribai died in 2003, which is when she would have died anyway." "But," Mira lifted her chai, put it back down. "My father's family used to say there's a difference between a house and a home. A house is a structure. A home is a structure that has been lived in, that has been breathed in, that has been loved in, shaped by the people inside it. You can tell the difference when you walk in one. You can feel it." She smoothed her sari over her knees. "After that night, those women were houses." I drove back to the Pune in dark, and I sat in my apartment with the recorder playing and replaying that last part. I wrote it down 3 times and deleted it 3 times. And around 2 in the morning, I called my editor and told him I needed more time. He said, "How much more time?" I said, "I did not know." It was only later, reviewing my notes from the beginning of the interview, that I found the exchange I had half forgotten. Near the start, before the chai, before Mira began her careful reconstruction of that October night, I'd asked her directly, "What would you say to people who believe in the woman were possessed?" She looked at me with an expression I had interpreted at that time as mild impatience. "Nobody was possessed," she said. I waited. "Possession implies," she said, "that it never left." I went back to Colwood 3 months later. I told myself it was for follow-up questions. Mira was not there. The granddaughter, the girl who had stood in the doorway, answered the door and said her grandmother had gone to stay with a cousin in Nashik and was not taking visitors. I thanked her and I turned to leave. The girl said very quietly, "My name is Priya." I said, "I know. Your grandmother mentioned it." There was a pause. "Did she?" the girl asked. I looked back. Priya was standing very still in the doorway, with both hands loose at her sides, and her head was tilted. Not quite, not fully, just a bit, to the left. She was 14 years old. She blinked. She asked me if I wanted chai. I said no, thank you, and I walked to my car. I drove down the unpaved road to where the signals returned, and I pulled over. I sat there for a long time. I have not filed the story. I do not know that I will. Something stresses being written down, not because they are unspeakable, but because the moment you name a thing, you make it real enough to look back at you. And I'm not sure anymore that I want it to know I have been looking.